Hello, I'm Jose with FrSky North America, and in today's video, we're going to take a look at Rates and Expo. Now, Rates and Expo is very basic and very easy to program on this radio, but I'm going to go through 3 different methods of doing the same thing. And which method you will use will depend on what you are setting up and how much flexibility you want. The first method is the basic method that everyone uses. It is very easy, so we'll go through that very quickly. The next method is using curves to set up Rates and Expo presets. And the third method is using Vars. Okay, I created a basic model, nothing in it. Let's go ahead and take a look at mixes. Here we go. So this is what you have set up after you do your model setup wizard. Let's go over to ailerons and we'll go ahead and set up Basic Rates and Expo. So I just edited it. So now we are in the ailerons mix. Now let's do weights and rates first. And notice that there's one already in there that says 100%. So this is your default rate. Let's go ahead and add another one over here and assign that to a switch position so you can see how this works. So I have SA minus, and I'm going to go ahead and set that to something a little bit more extreme, like say 50%. So now we can go ahead and see it. So the way that it works is if you are not on that switch position, then it'll default to the 100% rate. So if I am not on SA, the middle position, I can go to the top position, then it goes to the 100% rate. If I go to the middle position, then it's 50. And if I go down to the bottom position, it goes back to the 100% rate. So the rate that does not have a number is the default rate if the other condition has not been met. So for example, if we are not in SA minus or SA middle, then it'll be 100% rate. So this is nice if you have a 3-position switch and you only need 2 rates. So if you only need 2 rates, you just assign one of them and you're done. Let's go ahead and go to curve and let's add some expos. So over here, a curve, I go over there and what do you want? You can add a curve or you can just do expo, which is what we're going to do. And let's set our default expo value to 30%. There it is. So again, that 30% will apply to every single switch position or for this mix. If you add a new curve, now you assign it a switch position. We'll do the same thing. We'll assign that middle switch. So here's the middle switch, and I'm going to hit return to get out of it. Now over here, same thing. Let's add an expo, and let's make this something exaggerated so we can really see it. So let's go 70%. Okay, now if I go up here, switch is in the middle right now. If I go to the top position, it'll go to 30% expo, and so notice it's not as extreme. And if I go to the middle position, there's that extreme curve. And if I go to the bottom position, it goes back to that 30. What's nice about this is you do not need to program every single switch position. So just the ones that you're going to use, and anything else will be the default. So let's set this up for something that's normal. Let's go ahead and do a low rate, a medium rate, and a high rate. And at the top, we'll do a low rate, and maybe for the low rate, let's go for a low amount of expo. The mid position, since I already have it assigned to the mid position switch, that switch position, let's make that 30. And let's go ahead and add a new one, and that will be the high position. And let's make that expo, and let's make that 40. So some people like to do this. If you go to a higher rate, you have higher expo so that your sticks will feel approximately the same amount. And over here, let's do the same thing. So let's go ahead and make this one my low rate, and we'll do that with no switch assignment. And a low rate, let's make it 50%, let's just say. And the middle position, let's make that 75. And we'll add a new one, and that'll be for the high position. And we'll make that 100. There you go. So there's your rates and your weights set up. So if you're building a model and the rates are determined and the expo, you probably have a good idea. This is a really good way of doing it. This is very easy. You just go ahead and program the rates. So what I like to do is if there's a plane like an FMS or an E-flight plane that in the book tells you what a good starting point rate is, I'll go ahead and put that in here. And what I generally do for me is I put the low rate, the book low rate, the book high rate, and then if there's more, 100% or whatever the max that I feel for that particular plane. And so the book low, book medium, and then my high rate. And so I've got a good amount of adjustment that I can do in the air to see what I like better. And Expo, generally speaking, most manuals will not give you an amount that is a personal feel kind of thing, but you got to play with that and see what you like. I generally like to do a 30% Expo on everything, and then I'll adjust. So a lot of times on a very, very fast plane, I'll probably end up putting a lot more Expo in it. And on slower planes, I might put a little bit less Expo, but that's just by feel. You got to, figure out what feels good for you. So this is basically it. This is your setup for your Expo and your rates. So now, if that's all you want to do, that's it. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to add one more layer of complexity, which is by making the mid rate an adjustable rate. So what I need to do is I need to make this knob and assign it to the weight or the Expo. So let's go ahead and do the weight one. So the very basic way that you can do it, which is I don't recommend, but I can show you what it does and how it works, is because this has those 3 lines at the edge, that means there are more options than just inputting a number there. So if I hit and hold down here, I can go over here to use a source. Now, I can now click in there, and then I can assign it a pot. So the pot gives you adjustability. So I can go all the way up to 100%. The problem is I can also go to 0. What 0 means on the ailerons is absolutely no travel. So you definitely don't want that. And if I go backwards from there, I get into minus. So I actually just reversed the aileron direction, which you don't want. So you want to be able to limit this throw to something manageable in rates. So I would say if I'm feeling that it might be a lot of rate on that plane, I might go down to maybe 40% to 100%. So I want this pot from one extreme to the other to go from 40 to 100 instead of minus 100, 0, and 100. You don't want the entire range of that pot. So we need to limit that in some way. So I'll show you my way of limiting it. There's 25 million ways of doing this, and you can do whichever way that you want. But the way that I do it is by doing dummy channels. So instead of pot 1, I'm going to put a channel there. But first, let's create that channel. So here in the menu, I'm going to click anywhere in here in the center, and I'm going to go ahead and add instead of edit. I'm going to do a free mix, and I'm going to put it in the last position. Now let's call it, and I'm going to call this one aileron rates. And now the source for this, I'm going to put what I want to use to adjust, which is, say, this pot. At the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and give it an output channel of 64. Now, what I'm doing right here is I am creating a dummy channel, so a channel that I'm not going to actually broadcast out to the radio, but I'm going to use this channel as a source for that mix so that I can have this pot adjust by aileron rate. So the way that you can limit, there's a couple of ways you can do it, but the way that I like to do it, which I find very easy, is I'm going to go ahead and add a new action over here. and I'm going to do a curve. I want to add a curve. The name of the curve, I'm going to call this aileron. Whoops. Aileron rate limit. And the type of curve that I want is a custom, just 2 points. And the points are going to be my low extreme, which I'm going to say is going to be 30%. I'm not going to get any lower than that. Probably not going to get lower than 50%, but it's a good amount. And my high, so the highest, let's go all the way up to 100. So now I just made this pot adjustable from 30% from one extreme all the way up to 100% on the other extreme. Now I'm going to back out of that. And now you can take a look. There it is. If you look at the bottom over here, you can see our limits. So there it only went down to 30, and it only goes up to 100. While I'm here, I'm going to create another one. I'm going to add free mix, last position. Let's call this one oops. Okay. And the source is what I want to use for expo control. I'm going to say this knob. You can use whatever you want. So that pot. Same thing at the bottom. I'm going to go back up and let's make it channel 63. We'll do the same thing over here in actions. I'm going to add a new action. The action that I want is a curve. So I'm going to use this to limit. And the curve that I want to add a new curve. And this will be aileron expo limit. Okay. Type, custom, same thing, 2 points. Point 1. I think for expo, 0 expo is fine. And for point 2, let's say 65, maybe 70%. So there's my limit. And then now I can only go down to 0, so no expo. And I can go up to about 70% expo. So this is a good range for expo, I think. Let's go back out. And now I created those 2 channels. Those 2 channels are just there to limit the pot travels. And then now let's go into the ailerons, edit it. And now instead of having this number here, so instead of that 30%, I'm going to hit and hold down, use a source, and I'm going to choose channel. And the channel that I want for this one's expo, so there it is. And over here in the middle position, instead of pot 1, as I showed you, it's actually going to be channel, and it'll be channel 64, aileron rates. So now, if I'm in the top position or the bottom position, there'll be regular rates defined by the number over here and here, and 50 and 100 and 20 and 40 for expo. But in the middle position, I can now adjust my expo, and I can adjust my rate. So it's kind of nice to be able to do it in the air if you want to. Okay, one thing I almost forgot to show you is you go ahead and you fly your plane and you figure out your rate and your expo. So you've adjusted your rate, you've adjusted your expo in flight, and you're like, that's the number that I want. You can now make that into a solid number because obviously the pots can be bumped or moved, and at the end of it, you want to be able to set an actual value after you've tuned your plane. So you've tuned your plane, you figured out the perfect rate, and you figured out the perfect expo. Now you can come over here and go over here to expo, hit and hold down again, and go to convert to value. So whatever number that you had is now converted into a value over there. And then same thing over here for your rates. Hit and hold down, convert to value. Now those mixes are still in there, but they're no longer part of this mix, and it converted it to an actual number right there. So at the end of it, you can go ahead and make it into a fixed number so that you can move these pots all day long and it won't affect your rate and your expo. Okay, so the next method I'm going to show you is using a curve to define both rate and expo. This is a good method if you plan on using a template, so you can have a whole bunch of rates and expo already predefined in your curves area, and I'll show you how to do that. So one of the things that we can do is we can actually just do this all in the curve menu. So I'm going to go over here to the curve menu, over there, click that, and here's the ones that we created before. But anywhere in here, I can hit the center, enter button, and I can add a curve. And let's call this one 100 and dash 40. Type and expo in the curve menu is what I'm going to do. So it just happens to be, so the weight is 100%, expo is 40, but there it is, we're done. And I'm going to go ahead and go back out. I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to add another one. And let's call this one 80, 30. Type expo and make it 80 and 30. Let's create one more. Add, name, 70, 20. Whoops, 20. There it goes. Type, expo, weight will be 70, and the expo will be 20. So what's nice is you can create a whole bunch of different ones and have them as part of your template. Now I'm going to go back here to mix. I'll go to the elevator, edit it, and then now I'm going to leave weights and rates. I'm going to leave that at 100%, so I'm not going to touch that. I'm just going to go over here, and instead of going to expo, I'll just go down my list and add my 100% rate and 40% expo, add a new curve. Let's put this one in the middle position and make that 80-30, and add a new curve. Let's put that in this position and make that. So it's quite a really easy way to add rates and expo if you have some predefined numbers. A lot of E-flite planes, they pretty much use 70% as the low rate and 100% as the high rate. And if you have that as part of your template, you can just pop that in wherever you want. So that's it. That's your weights and your expo done in the curve area. All right, the next method that I'm going to show you is by using Vars to define your rates and your expo. And Vars is actually a very basic concept. It's very, very simple. All it is a number, and you can assign that number anywhere you want. So we're going to go ahead and do that on the rudder of this model that we created. So over here, we had defined our regular weights and expo, or your rates and your expo, by using the basic method. On elevators, we did it with the curve presets. And over here on rudders, we're going to define it with Vars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Vars page. So there's no Vars yet. This was a basic model when I first started. And we're going to create some Vars. And since I'm working with rudder, they're going to be a rudder rate and a rudder expo. Okay, so over here, let's go ahead and call this one rudder rates. And the range is kind of nice because what this will do is it'll limit it to a certain amount. So since I don't want any negative numbers, I'm going to make this 0. So now it'll only go from 0 to 100. The value that you want is your basic value that you want to start off with, but we're going to go ahead and just define 3 different weights in expo based on switch position. So let's just say that we're going to go low, medium, and high at the bottom. So the low rate we're going to define first, and let's just say that's going to be, let's make it 60%. Let's add a new value, and this is defined by a switch. So over here, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did before. So I'm going to assign it to the middle position. And let's make that 75. Add a new one based on a switch position, which will be down here. And we'll make that 100. So now we've got three different switch positions for 3 different rates, 60, 75, and 100. There you go. Let's add one more, var. So we're going to add over here. And we're going to name it rudder expo. And same thing for range. You can define your range. Let's just make it 0. Definitely want a 0 for an expo. To whatever you think your maximum amount is. And I'm going to say 70. There you go. And in the values column, I'll do my 3 different expos based on switch positions. So the first one is going to be whenever the other switch positions aren't hit. So let's make this my low rate of, say, or low expo, I should say. Let's make it 20%. Add a new one based on a switch position. Let's make that 30%. And let's add a new one for the high rate, and let's make that 40%. Arbitrary numbers, obviously. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but in Vars and in a lot of different things, you can actually go over here and go plus minus based on that. So that's 0.1%. So if I hit plus over there, it's 40.1, 40.2, 40.3, and so on. Minus will minus that same amount. But you can also go over here and change the value. So now it's 1% increments, 10% increments, 100% increments. Personally, I just like the scroll wheel. I think it actually works pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and crank this down and go back down to the 40% that we had set. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take these 2 vars I created. So I've got my rudder rate and my rudder expo, and you notice that it changes based on the switch position. So I'm going to go back to my mixes and go to the rudder, edit. And over here at curve, I'm going to choose Expo. And over here, instead of a number, I'm going to hit and hold, use a source, click again, and this time choose a var. This is Expo, so I'm going to move over here to Expo. And over here at weights and rates, instead of a number, use a source by hitting and holding, and then go to use a source, click again, and now I'm going to go to Vars again, and this is going to be my rudder rates. So now if you take a look, I have a low rate, medium rate, and a high rate with the Expo provided. Very, very nice. That's pretty much it. But because you're in Vars, you have other options. I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to go back to the Vars area. And I'm going to show you two different examples of doing this where I can trim the rates and trim the Expo with either a trim knob or these buttons or anything else that you want. So I'm going to go over here to rates, edit it, and over here at the bottom there's an action. Let's add a new action. And over here, this is what you want to do the action, or how you want to enable the action. So what I need to do is say, choose a switch. So say T5, and I'm going to say that direction is more and back that direction is less. So I'm just going to hit that, and it looks like T5R over there. And so that's going to add. Now this you got to play with. What's good for you? I would say 1 or 2%. Let's just do 1 for now. And let's add a new action again. And T5, the other direction, will minus. So now, what this is, I'll make this 1 again, 1 as well, is now every time I hit this switch, whatever var is active at the time. So right now we're in the up position, so not the middle or the bottom, then that var is active. If I hit T5, wrong one, there it is, it'll add and subtract your rate. Now you can make that a different number over here. You got to play with that, see what works for you. But now I can add and subtract rate to this. Now for Expo, we're going to use these buttons over here. Now I like to set these up as momentary switches so that I can do a lot of different things with it. So what I'll do is I'll make this over here my up and the bottom one my down. So up and down instead of using the trim. Before you do that, you want to double check. Go into Edit Model. And down here, look for function switches and make sure you're set to momentary. These function switches can be assigned as a 2-position switch. So it becomes on-off. When you press it, it's on, and then you press it again, it's off. Or you can press it and hold, and it's momentary, and that's what I have it assigned to. So make sure that's a momentary for this to work properly. And then I'm going to go back to my Vars, go to Rudder Expo, edit, and then now I'm going to go over here to actions so I can make these up and down for those. So add a new action. So what am I going to hit? Let's just say up, that button. So function switch 1. It's going to be add. Let's add 1 again. Let's add a new action and go over here. Maybe function switch 3, FS3, there it is. And this time subtract. And do the same thing, 1. So now, same thing, whichever one I happen to be on. So if you take a look over here, let's say we're in the middle position. Now I can add and subtract Expo. Works very well. So now you have adjustable rates and adjustable Expo. The difference is, since this is using Vars for everything, then you can actually adjust a bunch of different rates in Expo. So here's my 60% and my 20 Expo over there. Now I can go ahead and adjust my rates up and my Expo up and down. I can go to my middle position, adjust that as well. And my bottom position, adjust that as well. So again, make sure to go back to the mixes and edit, and just make sure that your curve is set to that var and your weights is set to that var that you created. So there you go. Now we have 3 different methods of using rates in Expo. For this last one, for Vars, what a lot of people like to do is they create a template, and instead of adjusting rates in Expo on each of these pages, they can just go to the Vars page and imagine that you had aileron rate, aileron Expo, rudder rate, rudder Expo, and elevator rate, elevator Expo on this page. You can go just to each one, edit it, and adjust each one of them. So you have one page to adjust all of it. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. That's it. This is a nice, easy introduction to Rates in Expo, but it's also showing you a couple of different methods of curves and Vars that you may or may not have used before. So always look at these kind of videos as not necessarily just about Rates in Expo, but it's also about doing other stuff if you want to learn how to do other stuff on your radio. Thank you very much. If you do have any questions or comments, go ahead and email me at jose@FrSky.rc. That's FrSky-rc.com. And you can leave a comment in the video. I do try to look at the comments and answer them. It's just every once in a while I don't see a notification and I just have to look and realize, oh wait, there was something that I missed, and it might be a couple of days. So thank you very much, guys. Have a good one.